Welcome back to Pretending with the Pretend Painter. This is going to be part 2 of episode 1 with Greg Gerardy. I hope you've caught the first part of this with his amazing story. If not, go back and watch the video. I'm not going to talk anymore. Now to the show.
There's been more men that have walked on the moon than people with just one lung that have done a full marathon.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I think there's about eight or nine known people with one lung that have finished a full marathon. There's been quite a few that have done halves, but very, very few have done a full, even a full marathon. And there might be others, so that's why I have to put the known one-lungers that have done a full marathon. Because
Is this a tight group? Like, do you know each other?
I wouldn't say we're tight, but we definitely know who each other are, and we're on contact and social media and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But there's one guy, his name's Don Cottrell. He's the oldest of us by far, but and he's kind of like I was. He didn't know either. He was just kind of out there doing it.
It was for yourself,
right?
Your own journey. It sounds like.
Yeah. But he's the fastest one that we've ever. He's like 83 now. I want to say 84.
Yeah.
But back when he was I think it was in his mid-30s was when he was out running a lot. And, he did a full marathon in about 3.5 hours, which with one lung is that's just crazy fast.
Yeah.
If he hadn't done it, I wouldn't think it would be possible.
Yeah.
I would say that's impossible. Just to maintain that kind of a pace with just one lung. But it's possible he's done it.
Yeah.
The fastest one I've done has been about 4.5 hours.
4.5 hours.
Yeah. But usually, depending on the conditions and hills and stuff like that, I usually take quite a bit longer. It's more like, somewhere around 5, a little over 5 to somewhere around 5.5 is more my average.
Yeah.
Like I said, for the longest time, I didn't, really share with anybody that I only got one lung. But, some of my close friends, some of my good friends were like, dude, you need to let people know what you're out doing, because if they know you only have one lung, that's crazy.
Yeah.
The stuff that you're able to do with just one lung. And so, I started finally kind of sharing that I only got one lung, and people were like, wow. And it just kind of exploded. Like, here's this guy with only one lung and he's doing all this stuff. And so I started, people from all over the world started reaching out and, asking me how I did it. And, especially other people with just one lung, and have been told the same thing.
Yeah.
It's impossible. You can't go do these things. How do you do? So I ended up, I was getting so many people reaching out that I ended up putting together like a little booklet of frequently asked questions.
Yeah.
And kind of a guideline of, what I did to get active again and how I approached it. It's really been interesting because when I first joined a lot of the forums of people with one lung, all of the conversations were about how do I get on disability?
Yeah.
What kind of oxygen machine do you guys use and stuff like that? And so
they bought into the story of being isolated and
can't do it. And so I started, putting out there a lot of the things that I've done and been able to accomplish. And, that just, it just kind of exploded there too. How did you do it?
Yeah.
And so, people were asking, I used to be active, but I didn't think it was possible.
Yeah.
And, so, started sharing with them, and, just lots and lots of people have now, gone out and at least done some sprint or Olympic distance triathlons. And, there's been several more that have done marathons, and
That's awesome.
And, even just getting out and riding bikes or whatever, and they're like, man, it changed my life. And, here recently I had the opportunity to go on a pretty epic adventure. This was just this last November. Last year I was invited, myself and Sean, the other one lunger that had done a full Ironman. we were invited to go participate in what they call the Great World Race.
Okay.
And that is 7 marathons in 7 days on all 7 continents. And so, that was, it had never been done before by anybody with one lung.
And Sean was doing this with you?
Yeah, Sean and I went and did it together, since we were the only two that had ever done a full Ironman.
Yeah.
We went out there and kind of tackled that challenge together. So, we all met in South Africa, and then we ran the first race in Antarctica.
So you just said you ran a race in Antarctica.
Yeah.
Tell me about that. Because I can't even imagine. I can't imagine walking from the building to the plane or to the boat or.
It's actually kind of interesting because there was about 60 people that started this race together. And it was some of the most incredible athletes in the world today. We had several Olympic champions that were out there. We had Ironman champions that were, world champions that were out there. All kinds of other ultra marathon world champions and stuff were on this race. And then there was, Sean and I. So, you had these people that were literally attempting to break world records and could just run faster than a bullet.
Yeah, the cream of the crop. Yeah.
Right. These are world elite athletes, world-class elite athletes out there. And then there's me, and I'm just thinking, what the hell? Yeah, these people are going to be waiting a long time. Yeah. But Antarctica, but anyway, let me get there real quick.
Okay.
So we had all of our logistics meeting and stuff in South Africa in Cape Town before the race started. So, we all show up to South Africa and we go to our kickoff meeting, and the race was supposed to start 2 days later. So we're in our kickoff meeting, we all kind of come in and sit down, and the race officials come in and introduce themselves, and they say, all right, everybody, we need you to go back to your hotel, get your gear. We're getting on the plane here in 2 hours, and we got to start today. We're like, what? It's not supposed to be we're not supposed to start for 2 more days. But then they kind of go in and explain to us that there's a weather system moving into Antarctica. Mm-hmm. And if we didn't go run today, then, we potentially could be stuck there for the next 7 or 8 days. Yeah. If we try to fly in and this weather system comes in, we could be stuck there for 7 or 8 days and not be able to leave. So we ended up going back, getting our gear, getting on a bus, going to the airport, getting on a plane, flying to, it was called Wolfswing, Antarctica.
Yep.
And there's no runway. I mean, they basically make the runway using snowcats, grinding it out of the ice. Mm-hmm. So, we're on a glacier. They call it the White Desert because it literally is. It's almost like a desert. But fortunately, that day was about as perfect a conditions as you could hope for.
Really?
But the air temperature was still like minus 20 degrees. But there was almost no wind. I would say the wind was only about 4 or 5 miles an hour. So it was very low wind. And the sun was shining. There wasn't a cloud in the sky. So, we were all, as we're getting off the plane, I'm bundled up, all this gear and jacket and, ski pants and everything else, and so we get out. And of course, the initial blast of cold air was like, oh, wow, it's cold. But then as soon as we get out and start walking around, that sunlight coming off of the snow and the glacier was so intense that, that radiant heat. I mean, we were shedding gear like you wouldn't imagine. I mean, it felt like it was like 30 degrees.
Really?
It didn't feel like minus 20 with that radiant heat. Even though the air temperature was like minus 20, just the regular, with all that radiant heat coming off the glacier, it just felt like more like 30. So I ended up running in like this was just like a little thin dry wick shirt, this and a t-shirt over the top, pair of sunglasses and my gloves and just like a pair of wind pants. And I was still almost sweating.
Really?
Yeah. Because I mean, you're also running too,
Yeah.
so you're generating lots of body heat. But it was really crazy. But I took my time on that one because the cold air really irritates my lungs, and I just wanted to make sure that I could finish that one was my goal. Taking my time. So I walked quite a bit of that one because I didn't want to be breathing heavy in minus 20 degree air because that really irritates the lung that I've got, and so I want to make sure I could still run the other races because the trail that we were running it's kind of like you're running laps around the base camp area that they had carved out with the snowcat. There were some areas that were so deep of snow that it was almost like running in beach sand.
Yeah.
So I mean that would just suck the energy out of you, just like, oh God,
I'm not going anywhere.
Exactly. I just felt like you're knee deep in beach sand trying to run through it. And then on the other side, you're running down the edge of the runway strip that they had carved out. And that one you were almost having to be careful because it was like ice with like a little bit of traction.
Yeah.
And so, there were some spots where you really kind of had to be careful so you didn't just slip and bust your butt.
Yeah.
So anyway, we finished that one. And then we go back to South Africa to run the second one in Cape Town.
The very next day.
Well, it wasn't even the next day. It was like less than about 4 to 5 hours after we finished Antarctica. We're flying back. We, get off the plane, get back to our hotel, change clothes, and then we're starting the next race. So we literally only had about 5 or 6 hours between the end of one race and the start of the next.
To try and sleep on a plane.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
So, we literally started and finished both the Antarctica and South Africa race within a 24-hour period.
Wow.
So that was almost more like a 54.4-mile ultra marathon.
Good snow.
But yeah, we ran the South Africa one, and that was definitely a whole different environment because in Cape Town, I think the temperature is like 75 degrees and nice and warm and sunny. You come from Antarctica and go back, then you're in almost a tropical temperature. And then our next one after that was in Perth, Australia. So we had a little bit more of a break, quite a bit more of a break. We slept on the plane.
Did switching from the cold to the 70 degrees, was that hard to adjust to, or was it a relief?
I didn't think so. I think it was more of a relief.
Yeah.
I didn't find the transition to be all that difficult. And then Perth, Australia was beautiful. The temperatures were, probably in around 65 degrees-ish. That was just beautiful running weather. It was a beautiful trail. That one was nice. And then after Perth, Australia, we went to Istanbul, and we actually ran 2 races in Istanbul, one on each side of the Bosphorus Strait, one on the Asia side, one on the European side.
Oh, yeah.
And those 2 races also, we started and finished in less than a 24-hour period, both of those. So, those were very close together, back to back.
Was the weather good on those?
Well, which one was, I get them confused. On the European side, the weather for that one sucked. That to me was the hardest race of them all. Because we didn't start that race until like after midnight. I want to say it was probably like 12:30 at night.
Yeah.
And it was raining and cold and windy, and you couldn't see where the dam, so you're kind of in the trail that we were running on. It was paved, but it wasn't in all that great a condition. And So, just that cold, raining, wet, windy environment was just, it just sucked the life out of me. It was just,
Where there's
that was the most brutal one.
so you started at midnight or close to that. Were there like spectators there? Was this something that people could watch, or is it?
Yeah, there some. I mean, some, but this was right along this. This was like right on the edge of the water. So one of the other things we were having to deal with was fishermen. They were like right there on our running trail. They would come out with their fishing poles and fish. What we're trying to. I mean, there was several times I almost got hooked. And, several other people almost got hooked. But there were, the race officials kept, and the police would come out and, tell the people that they had to leave, but they, kept wanting to do their fishing, and they'd get really upset about it, that they weren't able to fish that day.
Yeah.
But that was, I think the fish hooks were the most dangerous part of that one. But just that cold, windy, wet weather was prudent for me. But the next one on the Asia side, that was probably my fastest run by far, of them all. And that one I felt great, that next day, especially finishing that wet, windy one. And then the next day was a nice day, cooler. And there was one of the ladies, her name was Rebecca. She was from Great Britain. She was actually a firefighter. And she ran it in her full gear. Every race, all 7 in her firefighting gear.
Did you say her name again?
Rebecca, I forgot her last name. But she goes by Beck. That's what we called her out there, Beck. During the course of the race, the Miami Fire Department found out, heard that this British firefighter was out there running, this female.
Mm-hmm.
And so they just poured out. There was probably about 60 firefighters out there in their gear that ran one of the laps up and down with her.
That's so cool.
It was awesome.
Yeah.
I'm kind of tearing up a little bit. It was so phenomenal to see that they just rolled out and gave that support to her. It was really neat to watch. But
Do you have a full-time job?
I do. I have a full-time job. I work for Seagate Technologies.
Okay.
I'm in their global supply chain group, and essentially I coordinate and I guess direct a lot of their technology purchases and acquisitions for their IT related infrastructure for global operations. But I love the job. I love the company. Seagate actually sponsored me to go do the Great World Race last November. So, they're always very supportive of, my own disabilities and stuff like that. So that's, it's a pretty amazing company.
Yeah.
Yep.
So let's go back to when you were talking to the doctor, and they said you said that you wanted to do a triathlon.
Yeah.
What was the question that I think it was she asked?
Yeah, she just asked me what my goals were, and where did I want to be, and I was basically, because, I guess up to that point I told her I used to be active, but with this hole in the chest, I really can't do much of anything. And I had actually started, part of my, I guess, I would say rehabilitation prior to that. So I'd been out walking and running and stuff a little bit, leading up to that, so I'd already kind of started the transformation before I got the hole fixed. And started to try to get back in some shape and stuff. Because one of the things that the thoracic surgeon was trying was, putting like a wound back in there and stuff. So actually, when I went out running or walking and running and, a little bit of biking and stuff, I'd actually charge up the wound vac and put it in the backpack.
Yeah.
And go out and walk and run a little. And, I'd put it in the backpack when I was out, riding the bike and stuff. So I'd actually kind of started a little bit before that. And I was like, I'm just trying to get active again, and I want to be, try to get back to a normal self. And she asked, well, what's your ultimate goal? And then that was when I was just being a smart ass and sarcastic and said, oh, how about a full Ironman? Let's do that.
Well, I love the reason this is not called painting with the pretend painter.
Yeah.
Because there's a dreaming aspect of it.
Yeah.
And it's like, what small changes can we make today, or what can we talk about? How can we be the spark for the next thing? And this is something I'm thinking about is, so if that was one question that was different that started this whole change in your life, you were already starting it, but it doesn't sound like you were thinking marathon, triathlon, those,
No,
you were thinking.
Yeah. I was thinking maybe someday, maybe a sprint.
Yeah.
Which is a very short triathlon.
Yeah.
It's like what is it? I think it's a 750 meter swim, which is pretty short, and then it's what is it? I think it's just like a 5 or a 12.5 mile bike and like a 5K run, something like that, or a 10K, maybe a 10. I don't think it's a 10K. No, it might be a 10K. I can't remember. I'd have to go look again.
But if you could just talk to doctors and get the word out to doctors to where this little question, instead of, because people think of a bucket list.
Yeah.
And I got to do this before I die. This isn't necessarily improving my life. It's just things you want to get done. But if there's somehow a to-do list, like an opportunity list, like let's connect the dots to make these things happen versus the doom and gloom and the...
Yeah, well, it was kind of interesting. One of the last surgeries that I had was actually in Denver, Colorado. They opened me up and they were trying to see if they could expand this right lung back out. And, so the doctor had gone in and opened up the chest and had attempted to, release the tissue of the lung and get it unstuck and unfolded and stuff. But, that same day of the surgery, they actually ended up doing 2 different surgeries, but the first one, I probably had 5 or 6 chest tubes coming out, and I'm in the recovery room in the ICU, and my dad's there with me, and at this point, I was in good shape again.
Yeah.
I was very active at this point, and the doctor and the nurse comes in, and I'm like up walking around doing something, and they were just like, they were like, what are you doing up? And I'm like, well, I felt like getting up.
I'm on a little quicker time play than you guys are.
And, it's kind of interesting because the nurse was like, I have never in my entire career ever seen anybody out of bed, after a surgery like you just had, within like the first 2 or 3 days, they're usually all bedridden and can't move. Mm-hmm. It's definitely been an experience, a journey for sure, but it's the best way to describe it though is kind of almost going through a grief process, or the same kind of steps as grief, but I was stuck in that one rut for so long, and I didn't even realize it. Looking back, I can see clearly, where I was stuck. Mm-hmm. And, the other part of that is I was so stubborn. I pretty much, refused any kind of help or assistance or, the desire to even go get any help or assistance when, looking back, it's like, oh man, I should have. I clearly needed it. But it's so easy to look back and see that. Then when I was in that stage, there was no way you could ever convince me that, I had a problem. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was fine. I didn't need any help, but I clearly should have been, going to a therapist or something, to get help. But that's
on my story, it was very, very similar process. And even once I said I needed help, it wasn't, next week, next week.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I actually, like you said, look back, it was like, well, there was this warning sign, there was this. And I just over and over and over again saying, hey, my friends and family, my wife, these are the things that you need to do, or we think this is best for you. And luckily they did it in a way that I didn't reject them. I didn't do it, but I didn't resent them presenting it to me.
Yeah. Just looking back for myself, even if they did tell me, I would have dismissed it. I wouldn't have been, it's just, that's, I guess, kind of the nature of my personality. I'm so stubborn.
Yeah.
But that's, I think, part of my success too, is just being able to continue on and keep pushing myself is part of just that same stubbornness. But, and again, I didn't see it until I had pretty much, pulled myself up out of it. Then looking back, it was like, holy crap, I was in a really bad place.
Yeah.
But I couldn't see it for the life of me, at the time.
Couldn't see the forest because of the trees type thing.
Well, I could have been stuck in the middle of the forest and I would have said I'm in a desert.
Yeah.
And you couldn't have convinced me otherwise.
No.
So, yeah. But, I'm still kind of, when people ask me for advice or things like that, I still struggle with, how to explain that to somebody. Because, I'm not sure where they're at. They might be stuck in it too and still not see it, but I just try to tell them in my own, that I was stuck in that place and couldn't see it, and just try to, share that part with people too. So maybe if they are still in that place and can't see it, then maybe that'll encourage them to at least maybe try to talk to somebody or get some help or, see a therapist or something, and then maybe help get out of it. But I see that at least with others with one lung that are going through this kind of stuff. I see it all the time that there's, people get stuck in that same area that I was and never get out of it. But I'm hoping though that, it seems to have made a difference. I know when I first got into the forums, I mentioned how, the main topic was, how do I get on disability? What kind of oxygen machine or tank do you guys use? And all that kind of stuff. But the conversations now are very different in those same forums. People are now talking about, how active they are and, hey, I went on a bike ride and, people are asking advice. So what kind of bike did you get? All that kind of, it's just very different conversations across the board. And
I think a lot of that is the generational change, just because my parents' age and beyond, it was don't let anyone know about your struggles.
Yeah.
Keep it quiet, keep it internal. And I think there's been a shift in that. And now, instead of it being just how do I do this, this is who I am. How do I get better? How do I have fun? How do I can show my weakness and still do the stuff. And I think a lot of times your weakness becomes your strength. Because you focus so much training and energy into that now you're exploding in it, and you want to get that.
Yeah. I know for myself, I work in the corporate world, so there's always kind of a stigma, with if somebody has a history of cancer, if you're applying for a new position or, looking to make a career change or something, there's always kind of a stigma associated with it, as almost kind of a liability, especially when they've got 50 or 500 people applying for the same position. If somebody has if somebody has a history of cancer, it's almost a mark against you, because people tend to think that you might get it again, and then you're a liability to the work and the workplace and all that kind of stuff. So, I always had that running through my mind as, part of why I didn't ever talk about it, because I just didn't want, professionally, I didn't want it to be known. Mm-hmm. But now, like you said, I've kind of turned it around, and now it's a huge strength. It's a huge positive that, especially Seagate, they embrace it. They're like, they kind of a poster child essentially too for them, but it's definitely been, a struggle, or it was a struggle for a long time for me to even start to talk about it,
Really?
Yeah.
You seem so comfortable.
Well, I am now.
Yeah.
but for the longest time, I really struggled with sharing anything. It was, like you said, don't let anybody know about your weaknesses. And I definitely had that mentality for a long time. But I've tried to, like you said, turn it around and make it a strength, and use it to try to be as positive as I can be. And
so obviously we didn't do our paintings very much. We'll show them off. They're beautiful. I will finish. I will finish these, both of them, and then they'll be auctioned off. The money proceeds will go to a charity of your choice. Who would you like it to go to?
I would say probably either Longevity or American Lung Association, since those two are kind of near and dear to
50-50
my
on both?
cause. Yeah, that would work.
All right. So that's who the proceeds will go to. Obviously I'm brand new to this, so give me a little grace on figuring this out. But I'm going to try and figure out a way to have just a regular donation button on there too. That way, if you don't want the art, that's fine, but you can still contribute to the cause and helping people in similar situations get the help and the relief that they need. So today's sponsor was Diamond Sea Soil and Forestry, and he donated $100 for the show. That money has gone straight to Wounded Warriors Foundation. And if you, his business is, if you have an overgrown property, say it's got a lot of cedar trees, it's got native trees, he goes in with a machine and takes out the cedar trees. It's basically a big mulcher. It's on wheels, so it doesn't tear up the ecosystem as much. It's a big machine, so it's more efficient than the skid steers and things like that. Basically, it takes a overgrown property and he can turn it into a park. It's beautiful work that he does. A good friend of mine, and I asked him if he wanted to be a sponsor. He's like, "Do it." And so here's how this works is the sponsor for the next episode, it will be $200. And it will still go to Wounded Warriors Foundation. And third episode, if I have a sponsor for this one, will be $300, $400, $500. It's just a way of I want to support whoever wants to be a sponsor for my show. we don't need the money. This is not something I'm trying to get rich off of. This is a way of telling a story and helping people.
Yep.
So that's where I'm at on that. But I'll put Diamond Seed's information on here somewhere when I figure out how to do it.
Do you mind if I say?
Yep.
I would like to thank a couple of people or a couple of organizations like American Lung Association and Longevity. Their goals and their ideas about spreading hope to others that are facing these similar challenges. Those, hopefully we can change the whole perception of what having one lung is. And then also to Advanced Wound Therapy, they've always been a big supporter of mine and helped out, and they're always willing to go the extra mile to help me get whatever I need and do whatever I need to do to keep setting new limits on what we're able to accomplish. So
Awesome. Thank you for being on my show.
well, thanks for having me, man.
Well, thank you for watching this podcast. Just like always, only love. See you guys.